Welcome all. Coleman Report Live, May 19th edition. Lance Sexton Coleman, instructor extraordinaire. Lance, you're still in your dad's basement.
Hey, you know what? It took me approximately, in the ballpark, 45 years, Bob, to come back to the basement, but I'm here.
The prodigal son returns. And Katie Wittucky. Katie, welcome. We got a lot of information, a lot of stuff going on. And let's see. Do we have, Joseph, I'm looking at this. Do we have the question? There they are. Do we have the questions from yesterday, Joseph? Did we put those in the script?
No, I'll add them real quick.
Add those real quick because we have two questions held over. Hey, for those of you who are new, download these certificates. They answer the question, what are you doing for training? It helps in your SBA review as well as your auditor review. Just download those and keep track of those. And that's part of the perk of you guys all turning in. Let's go to the poll questions. Rate the performance of Treasury Secretary Mnuchin and SBA Minister Carranzo implementing the 220 CARES Act. We're going to talk about that today. There was a Senate hearing. Katie's all up to speed on that. But let's start with your, just what do you think?
You know, Bob, this question is kind of a two-part question to me. It's, rating the performance based on speed is one grade. Rating the performance on what I would like to see would get a different grade.
How do you feel about those results, Lance?
I'm not totally surprised. I mean, I think from the perspective, Bob, of speed of getting the program out there initially, they get an A+ from me. They did get it out. In terms of crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's, the C grade may be appropriate, but if you take into account how quickly they had to push it out, I still think an A/B grade is appropriate for it. I think the PPP program has been tremendous, that it's provided some relief that small businesses need. And I look forward, we have relief or the forgiveness guidance, but I look forward to, it's going to change too as the days pass. So Bob, I would be solid between an A and a B on this.
Katie, Katie, what's your grade? What would you grade them?
Well, I think they definitely had to consider a lot of factors when they were implementing the CARES Act, and things were changing pretty much on a daily basis. Even just writing my articles, sometimes I would write something the night before and it would change within a couple hours. So they had to consider that when they were implementing this stuff. And I think really, and that's part of what I'm going to report on today, is those things, they couldn't foresee everything that was going to happen. And so I think given the information that they had at the time, I think they did really well at implementing this. So maybe an A or a B for me as well.
Good. All right. This is just for our own internal analysis. We're getting record turnout for this show, which we thank you very much for your support. Just out of curiosity, I think we know the answer on this, but where are you? How are you listening to this location? And we probably should have put solo at work, but that's fine. Go ahead,
Bob.
Lance.
Should have put conference room over 10 as a trick response. Yeah,
I'm very good. Well, that's a little bit higher than I thought. The 1 to 5. Very good. Very good. Okay. Well, thank you for that. Katie, what happened today at the Senate?
So they had a quarterly CARES Act report, and this is all through an online system because they, of course, want to maintain social distancing and be safe through all of this. And they looked at a lot of different topics, and I think we have several slides here to discuss it. But really what it's looking at is the success of the program and the implementation and those things to see how it's working so far and what we need to do moving forward.
Let's go to the next slide. Here we go. This is an interesting quote. What is he saying? What is he telling Congress?
Right. So he talked a lot about the spirit of the law and how they took what they had at the time and really worked with it. The idea was that they really wanted to help small businesses as fast as possible. And that's what they were doing through all of the actions that they took and all of the different implementation that they sent out. Was they were really trying to make sure that those funds got out there so that these small businesses could stay in business. And that was really the focus. And that continues to be their focus as they look forward to new laws and new ideas for expanding upon the CARES Act.
Katie, it's a blood sport for the Democrats to for the Republicans in these hearings and vice versa. What was the sense? What was the takeaway that you got? How badly were the Democrats speeding up on the Treasury Secretary?
I did feel like they were a little bit upset. There was a bit of...
Let me stop you there. What are they specifically upset about? Go ahead.
They're not really. I have to admit, I have been kind of flipping back and forth throughout the video throughout the morning just to make sure we get these quotes and things. But it seems like they're not too happy about the 75% rule and things like that and how that is being all implemented. And so they don't think they necessarily did follow the spirit of the law throughout this entire process.
Lance, what is the 75% rule?
Bob, it's something that I am, if I were a betting person, I'd bet that it's going to change, but 75% of your PPP loan must be spent on payroll in order for it to be forgiven. And that's still the rule. And with small business owners that I've had an opportunity to talk to, I said, hey, look, put your money in a separate account, write paychecks from it until it runs out, then ask for forgiveness, and you'll be golden. You'll get forgiveness. But the problem with that, Bob, is, as you and I both know, there's so many types of businesses, hair salons, restaurants. They got PPP loans that are not really open yet and couldn't necessarily spend it that way. They may need to spend more on rent, more on utilities.
Yeah.
The one thing, to keep the business open, to bring the employees back when the time was right. So, I think we'll see that change. But as of this point, 75% has to be spent on payroll to be forgiven.
Katie, are they talking about pumping more money into the fund?
From what I've heard so far, it doesn't sound like they want to pump too much more money. It sounds like they want to maybe put it toward other programs or possibly some things that will work with the CARES Act, but aren't necessarily the PPP loan program.
But the current velocity of the PPP loan program, the remaining funds could last for, I thought it would be a matter of days. There are various organizations.
You would have put me
various organizations. Yeah, various organizations were waving the flag and saying the money's going to run out. There's enough money at the velocity applications are coming in. It could last for a few months.
Right. Let's go to the next slide. Katie, what are we talking about here?
So they did create several new Federal Reserve lending facilities. What was that? That was over the weekend here on Sunday. I think on the next slide, we have a list of those. And that is where some of that you were asking about if there's additional funds. That's where some of this extra funding is going toward. And there are a lot of different facilities here. I don't know the exact difference between all of these yet, but those were just the ones that were created here on Sunday.
Now, we say since March 17th, I have approved. I assume that's from the Treasury Secretary. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Yeah, that makes sense. If you look at that laundry list, that's pretty amazing, Lance.
It really is. And again, the response was amazing. It wasn't perfect, but it was amazing. And, quite often the media focuses on those businesses who may have gotten the funds and didn't need it, or they'll focus on somebody that's afraid of forgiveness. Give me a story of the small business owner on Main Street who this had
Thank
a
you.
positive impact. There are thousands more stories like that than there is a small business owner sitting back saying, "Woo, am I going to get forgiven?"
Yeah.
It, I would like to see the media focus on the positive impact the program has had.
There's always going to be a rogue. There's going to be a rogue situation. Yeah. And we're guilty of that with our Fraud Friday stories. I'm sorry, but we but you're right.
Oh no,
You're
Bob,
right.
I love the Fraud Friday stories, especially, and I know this was not good for the PPP program, but I think it's pretty gutsy to go out and buy yourself a Rolls Royce and an $80,000 piece of jewelry with your PPP funds.
No, it wasn't gutsy. It was stupid.
Yeah, he's not going to get out of jail free Monopoly card, is he, Bob?
I know. Very good. Let's go to the, let's see. This is interesting, and we've just put this in here for Mark Cuban, the owner of the Dallas Mavericks. And he's saying, it's a great plan with difficult execution. It's the Monday morning quarterbacking is certainly going to start, and you can pick what you want. I still maintain, Lance and Katie, that if we were 3 months out and June 1st PPP was rolling out, then it would have been. Yeah, I mean.
I'm sorry, Bob. Mark did make a good point. We have given money to small businesses to keep them open, to keep people employed, but now we need the customers to come back. And I read an article where Mark was talking about we need to do something to get more money in the hands of consumers. And I don't know if it was him or someone else that was talking about another round of stimulus, but you had to spend the money in 10 days. That's a pretty effective way to get the economy rolling if you
don't give it to my wife. She can cut that in half.
10 days.
She's on a 5-day window. Hey, let's go back to the previous slide. Katie, we're talking about Rubio and I can't pronounce his name. We'll call him the Treasury Secretary. What are the significant PPP revisions that they want to impose?
Right. So I talked about this a little bit yesterday, and I think this still goes with what we've been discussing with the CARES Act and everything. As Lance already described, they are talking about adjusting the 75% rule so that possibly the funds can go toward different kinds of businesses that maybe aren't as payroll heavy businesses that maybe have smaller amount of payroll but a very high overhead or things like that. If payroll isn't their problem, then they still can't be open. And like Lance was saying, there's some things that just cannot open right now. Even if we're paying payroll, they just can't work. Hair salons and things like that. If the state doesn't allow it, then they can't do anything.
Yeah, they're independent contractors. Do we know the specific changes Senator Rubio and the Senate Small Business staff want?
They're discussing is changing the 8-week points for when you must use these funds. There was a little bit of talk about how they might want to implement it. Somebody had suggested maybe having the 8-week points start when we're able to open again. So as soon as your state's able to open, then you start the 8 weeks. But I don't think Rubio has specifically said how he wants to implement it, if that's his intent or not.
Well, I think the positive takeaway is we understand there's glitches and there's bugs, and there's a lot of smart people, a lot of dedicated people who want to make this work. So I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt. And as Lance was saying, the 75% or something doesn't make sense, you certainly have bipartisan support to make it work. And I love the quote by the Treasury Secretary that says, hey, Joseph, go back to that quote, because I think that's the important takeaway from the hearing today, where he said, we worked in a bipartisan method. I'm following the exact letter and spirit of the law that we negotiated with you and others on a bipartisan basis. And we can't forget this. This is definitely bipartisan. If there's specific things we need to change, we can do that. But we are committed to following the literal and spirit of the law and the negotiation. And I think that's a very you don't see people I mean, yeah, they're going to snipe at each other. You know, you're always going to have that. But I thought it was a positive hearing, Katie. Why don't you wrap that up and then we'll go to the questions.
Right. I think with this whole spirit of the law, they're really looking at this and the OIG report and everything that's just come out about all this. They really want to make sure that they're helping small businesses. And that's really the goal overall, was always to help small businesses. And I think working a bipartisan way is something you're going to see with the Small Business Association and everything, is that everybody cares about small businesses. Nobody wants these businesses to go under. So everybody's working as hard as they can.
Very good. Let's go to the questions. When filing the 1502, do we submit a negative number in total to FTA field as our guarantee percentage, Lance?
I don't really understand the question. If you could ask whoever asked this to rephrase, because the guarantee percentage is 100 on the PPP loans. So I'm
Okay.
not real sure what this.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay.
I don't know. I don't know how to respond, Bob, because the question is somewhat confusing.
Okay, no problem. Maybe the person who wrote that can clarify. Is there discussion about those businesses that gave the money out but were open? Will they get additional funds?
There was a interim final rule on increases for certain categories of business. So, and you may see with plenty of funds available, the possibility of increases on PPP loans, but we've not gotten any guidance on that yet. But there was, Katie, there was an interim final rule on increases for certain types of businesses.
Great. Okay. Tony is questioning our reporting, which is fair. You guys seem to be downplaying the criticism too much. Cuban was not Sunday quarterbacking. The reason why, first of all, I'll throw it to Lance. Lance, I'll let you go first.
In talking about what Mark Cuban, Mark made a positive comment. He said the PPP program worked to an extent, but its execution was a little, cloudy. And I agree 100% with that. I think the PPP program has met its mark for helping small businesses and keeping people employed, but the execution was a little challenging. But guys, again, you have to look at the scope of things. $500 billion worth of lending would be 12 years worth of the best SBA lending year. And you did 12 years worth of lending in about 8 weeks. So, you would expect the execution to be a little challenging with that volume and with the speed they had to roll the program out. It's just like forgiveness. We all got real anxious, including me, about forgiveness because it wasn't released when it was supposed to be. But goodness gracious, guys, all of this is rolled out so quickly, and it's not going to be perfect. And that's why they have to come behind it with all sorts of adjustments to the PPP loan program. And the same thing will be true. Forgiveness, I think, has the building blocks set. It's like building a house. They've got the building blocks set, but they haven't picked the shingles for the roof yet, if that makes sense.
Very good. My comment on that is we can spend the entire show criticizing the program. And I think from an editorial viewpoint, we are saying, hey, we understand there's issues. We understand there are problems, but let's put everything into context. That's my opinion, Lance.
Absolutely.
Several questions on the 1502 reporting. We are now 2 days away from the deadline to upload our PPP loans. Any word on the process for that? And how do we exactly do that, Lance? Is there a template we should use, or should we use the current 1502 template?
Well, I think you have the option of there was a template, and you have the option of using either or.
Very good.
You can report
let's see. Hey, I appreciate all the questions. I think we have time to get to them all. Has anyone seen any denial letters on economic disaster loans? And if so, for what reason? Have you heard of anything out there?
I have not seen any denial letters, only the approvals. I've not seen a denial letter. You know, the one big thing about it, I'm sorry, the one big thing about EIDL loans, I've had a couple people call me who applied for $1 million or $2 million, and when they cut the size back to 150, they got their approval at 150.
Ariana asked a great question. Katie, I'll throw it to you. Do we know how much money is left to be dispersed?
That was said, I don't have it in front of me right now, but that was said in the report today. Oh, there it is. So they've done $4.2 million or million loans and $530 billion in those loans.
Lance, this is for you. We have not addressed this issue. Are we going to talk about the lawsuits against SBA and the larger lenders regarding PPP? You want to comment on that, Lance?
Well, I'm not an attorney, Bob, but most of those, in my opinion, have very little merit. And yes, people like to jump on board and sue. You know, that initial round of lawsuits was related to, I think, the larger companies getting PPP loans upset people. The media jumped all over it. But I'm going to be honest with you, when it first came out, they qualified. They did. You know, those large companies did nothing wrong. They qualified. Now, you know, those that are responsible. I read a story about a real estate management company in San Francisco who's not returning the funds. And, you know, they indicated we have employees, and this has allowed us to bring back the employees who were laid off. And guess what, guys? If you read the CARES Act, that's what the spirit of the PPP program was all about, was keeping people employed or bringing people who were laid off back to work. So, yeah, they're going to spend a lot of money chasing after banks, well, guys, a gentleman's club sued the SBA over the PPP loan program, filed suit against the SBA over the PPP loan program. You know, gentlemen's clubs have never been eligible for PPP or for SBA loans, period. And I don't know what their basis is other than SBA opened it up to nonprofits, which included churches. So they're saying, why them and not us? But, you know,
Lance, we keep on getting these questions on the 1502. Give us best practice what we should need to do by Friday regarding PPP and the 1502. There's a lot of confusion out in the industry about that.
Yeah, Bob, the 1502 report, quite frankly, the only thing that's different that I've seen is that there's an alternate way to report the loans, and the due date has changed as a result of the safe harbor issue. Other than that, it's the same.
Okay. All right. Very good. Lance, tell us what you're going to be talking about tomorrow on our webinar.
Well, we're gonna dice the forgiveness piece up and talk about it and provide an example. You know, I do believe the forgiveness guidance that we've received is, like I said, is still the structure of forgiveness. We may see some tweaks down the road, but we're going to talk about forgiveness, the new SBA form for that, and what to look for as a participant lender as all of these thousands and thousands and thousands of customers come back to look for forgiveness.
Millions. Hey,
Millions.
And remember, it's a two-parter. Lance is going to talk about guidelines. We anticipate further guidance based on the reporting this morning and what Rubio is saying and everyone else is saying. And that webinar will be on May 27th. You sign up for one, you get both. So it's a double-header, two-parter. Thursday is a sponsored webinar. There's no fee for that. And Bowfly, Mike Rosman is going to be doing a presentation on, hey, if you just want to wash your hands of this, there are lenders who are willing to buy your portfolio. And that could be interesting. Go ahead, Lance.
That Thursday program, Bob, I think is very impactful because there were a lot of lenders who were not real active in the SBA lending program who may have had 20 or 30 SBA loans who now all of a sudden have a few hundred. And they're like,
Mhm.
what are we going to do with it? How are we going to deal with the servicing? And Mike's going to talk about an opportunity for you to either sell the servicing rights or sell the whole portfolio. So it's no fee, and
It's just an
Mike's an
option.
old
We're not,
friend.
we're not advocating either way, which is an option that you may choose
Yeah.
to do. Very good. And with that, thank you all for joining us. We appreciate your numbers, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Thanks.
Thank you.